Alright, hello everyone. So I am actually refilming a few of my first, what are they? I guess books I read in this month video. I went back and kind of looked at a few of my older videos, especially the first ones that I ever really posted to do with book content, and I wrote myself a list. So I've broken these videos up into different sections, and so you'll see me in the same shirt for all of them because, I mean, I've filmed them in one day. So, um, we'll just talk about the elephant in the room that I'll have the same shirt on. But basically, in this video, this one, I'm going to go over what I read in January, February, May, and June of 2024. The second video will go over March, April, May of 2025. And the last one will be January and February of 2026, so our current year, because as if I didn't mention, those videos just didn't have good lighting, the microphone wasn't working, or it was just not the best quality because it was my first YouTube videos. But we've all got to start somewhere. But I thought I would refilm these because I will kind of give you an updated version of how I feel about these books, if I still remember them, if they're worth a read, if I have forgotten about them, honestly. So we're just going to jump in. I've actually found my old reading journal / diary situation, so I'm actually going to go through the list here. And to start off with, in January, I read The Roughest Draft by Emily Wimberly and Austin, is it Sigmund Broker? I think it is. Now, I still remember really, really, really liking this book. It was like one of the best romances that I had read in 2024. And I remember it's about two writers who are basically coming back together to finish a book that they've co-written, I guess you could say, and I guess it's part of their contract, so they've kind of forced to come back together to finish this book. So a bit of forced proximity, a bit of I dislike you to lovers, because like they're not enemies, but they don't really like each other. There's a reason that they kind of stop talking and they kind of cut this deal a bit too. So you basically get to see them come back together. They start writing this book and you go on their journey together, and it's really, really interesting. It's very summary, and it's a really, really good romance book. Like, honestly, I would really recommend this. It's like up there with like Emily Henry books, which I really, really love. So would 100% recommend. Then I read Mortal Remains by Kathy Reach. I feel like I could be saying her last name wrong, and I've been doing that for a long time, but we're just going to go with it. But basically, as I say every time I talk about these books, it is about Dr. Temperance Brennan, who is a forensic anthropologist. She works with bones and she studies bones and she tries to figure out who they belong to, basically, or who this person was. And she either gets a call to say, there's X, Y, and Z, go check it out. She finds something that she starts investigating, or she gets kind of pulled in to other like districts or places that are kind of can be connected in a way. They can kind of call outside workers to like come in to their place of work and basically help solve murders or mysteries and things like that. So there's a few kind of different storylines, but they all kind of end in a similar way in terms of her being pulled into this mystery, figuring out who these bones belong to, and trying not to get herself killed, basically. So it's crazy. This one is about she finds a dead body, is called to examine it, and discovers that the man is called John Lowry, an ex-soldier who was killed in Vietnam in 1968. So who's actually buried in this man's grave? And she basically goes on this hunt to find out who's buried in this man's grave, what his backstory is, his history, how he ended up where he did. It's really fascinating because Kathy Reach herself is actually a forensic anthropologist, and it's really fascinating to get like a glimpse, I guess, into this line of work, and having someone that actually does this for a living and being able to kind of turn it and make it in a way where we can digest it, and it's really easy to read, and it's really, really like, it just keeps you on the edge of your seat, really. So I would recommend her books if you find them at up shops, because that's where I normally get them from. Then we have 19th Christmas by James Patterson and Maxine Petro. I think is how you say her last name. Part of the Women's Murder Club series. There is like 25 or 26 books at this point in time. And it's basically about, I think there's like 4 women or something. I think one's like a copper, one works in the newspaper or as a journalist, one I think works in like labs and stuff. I can't quite remember. It has been a while since I've read these books, but they're all kind of connected to, I guess, like working with crime scenes and sort of things like that. So they all kind of come together and they solve these mysteries. These books are connected. I learned that the hard way, so I did not read them out of order like I did. I only read this because I found it at an op shop, but they're really quick reads. I would recommend reading them from start to finish if you're into kind of murder mysteries, and you get the friend dynamic, you get kind of relationships and stuff, but it all changes throughout the books. So, I mean, I would recommend it. Like, I don't mind reading these. They were really quick reads, and they were they weren't too bad, so I would recommend them. Then I read Heartstopper Volume 5. Honestly, it's been so long. The 6th book comes out this year, and I'm so keen to get this last book. Oh my god, I've missed this series so much, and following Nick and Charlie, so I remind myself. But yes, following Nick and Charlie and their story, I love these books. I cannot recommend them enough. I love the art in them. It brings out my inner artist. Like, I love these books so goddamn much, and I will never stop talking about them. So if you want to follow Nick and Charlie's story as they kind of navigate who they are and trying to figure out if, you know, how they feel is right, or if what they're feeling is wrong, or if they're actually, like, you know, if they're actually who they think they are, and they kind of just go on this journey to find themselves. They kind of meet friends, they like to start this little friend group. Nick and Charlie obviously go through a lot together, and it's really wholesome. Like, it's a really, really, really nice book. It is a part of, like, it's got queer aspects in it. It is the LGBTQ plus community, so like you're learning a lot more about just people being gay or bi or straight. Like, there's a lot more to it than that, and I think Alice Oseman really does a good job going in depth with all this stuff and kind of conveying what it's like being in high school and having these feelings and just not feeling either like yourself or just that you don't belong. And it's just fascinating. Like, I would really, really recommend people read these books. It's really eye-opening, and I just love them so much. Then I think we've got The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. I will always recommend a Kate Morton book. I love her books. At this point in time, I think I've read about 5 of them or 4 of them, I think. 4 of them. So I remember this one being slow. I remember it's about, you're mainly following a Nell, is it? Her granddaughter, Cassandra. And you basically follow Cassandra as she figures out kind of her grandmother's history and where her grandmother came from, and just kind of unraveling like all these secrets that her grandma has. And it's really, really interesting because Nell, the grandmother, gets found basically. Um, she's on a passenger ship bound for Australia. I think she comes from London, possibly, and she basically just gets shipped off during World War One to Australia by herself. And it's a past and present timeline, so you're following Nell, the grandmother, as she kind of, once she turns up in Australia, and kind of what happens to her, and she kind of gets thrust into this really, really interesting world. And then you're following Cassandra, who's trying to basically solve the mystery, and you're basically going through it with Cassandra, so you're learning about it with her, but then you can be ahead of Cassandra in terms of knowing information, because Nell is obviously giving you information and kind of retelling her story. So sometimes you know more than the main character, sometimes you don't, and there's always, always, always a crazy ass plot twist at the end that I never see coming. So I would really recommend her books. I did get it on my Kindle because it was a bit slow, but it really picks up towards the halfway point, and then the rest of the book just flies by. So I will always recommend her books. And last for January was Normal People by Sally Rooney. this was not what I expected. I really did not expect the story I was going into, and I loved it regardless. I thought it was amazing. Like, I got a little bit put off because she doesn't use, like, quotation marks, I think, for, like, who's speaking and stuff, and so it can get a little bit confusing about who's talking, who's not talking, if it's another thought, if it's not. Like, if, it can be a little bit confusing to start off with, but it gets really easy once you kinda get into the flow of her writing. But you're basically following Connell, I think it is, and, um, Marianne, I think is also who it is. I think Connell's mum basically cleans Marianne's house, parents' house, and Connell and her kind of connect that way. They both go to school together. I think they're in their last few years of high school, and they kind of spark this relationship between the two of them, and it kind of just takes off from there. You're basically following their journey over so many years, like even through college and everything. And it was a little bit heartbreaking, a little bit, there's like the yearn there because you just want them to be together, and it's really interesting. And then it kind of leaves on like a you fill in the blank ending almost. So it's kind of almost up to the reader's interpretation, I think, which I found really interesting too. But I really liked it. Like, I still remember this book and I still really want to read it again. So I would definitely recommend reading Normal People. Like, it's really good actually. And then we have February. So I read Spy Family, the first one, loved it. It's just another, I think it's manga, but you've got your like comic book style pages, art style, love it, loved all of it. You're basically following, I don't know what his actual name is. I can't remember, but it says Master Spy Twilight, but like I said, I don't know what his actual name is. He goes undercover and basically he meets a woman who's an assassin and a little girl who is a telepath, and they basically form this family as like an undercover situation, like they're covering up their tracks. And it's so funny watching this man who does not want to be a father basically be a father and like raise this little girl, who him and the woman adopt to kind of bring this full picture together, and it's actually really funny, and I really liked it. And I haven't actually even read the second one yet, but I keep thinking about it. Like, every time I try and find the second one at shops, but they never have them, so it is in the back of my head. But I would 100% recommend that book. It made me laugh out loud so many times. And then we have The Betrayals by Bridget Collins. I remember this book was very odd. I remember the back of the book stating there's this big, grand jeu, basically like this big game, and it doesn't really go into detail in the book about what this game is actually about. It's really confusing, and I just remember the whole time going, "What the hell am I reading?" And I just like, I was like, "What?" There was actually a plot twist that really did get me, and I was kinda like, "Oh, damn, alright, like, this is pretty good actually, like, don't mind it." But at the time, it was slow, it was it was confusing, I was kind of just really just wondering what was going on and what this game was about. Because, as I said, they make this big deal out of this game that these, students kind of play when they go to this, like, um, I guess, like, college or just some sort of, like, high standing academic thing. Like, it's kind of for, like, a rich people, really. And it's odd because, like, it's not a typical game like you'd think of, like, with trials or things like that. It's more, I guess it could almost be like dark academia, where it's really academic. It's really, like, about their education, about what they're learning, about, like, formulas and figuring things out and just being really smart and stuff. So it's I would probably actually say something along the lines of it being a dark academia, but I don't know if that's what it's advertised as. But yeah, the plot twist is crazy. So you're basically following, what's his name? His name is Leo. He went to the school years and years ago. He leaves, and then in the present timeline, he comes back to the school to basically be, I think he's comes back to be a professor, or he just comes back to kind of do some study or something. And you're basically following Leo as he goes through the past and present timeline and recalling his um, memories of the school and kind of what happened to him while he was there, and this rival that he ends up kind of actually being friends with, and their dynamic really shifts in the book. And then kind of coming back to the present timeline, you meet a girl or a woman named Claire, and she seems really familiar to Leo, but he just can't put his finger on it. He just doesn't know who she is, and he's kind of trying to figure that out in the present. So it's interesting, but like I was just like, I don't know. I think the back of the book just doesn't really do the actual book justice, so maybe just don't read it going into it. I think it would be better off to go in blind, honestly. Um, then after that, I read Aussie Soldiers, Prisoners of War. I know this was so random, but I got it from an op shop. I was actually really fascinated by it because in school for us in Australia, we do learn about World War One and World War Two, and we do learn a lot about our history, but we don't really go in depth in terms of like prisoners of war stories, or just like it's kind of a like this is what you need to know, so this is what we're going to teach you. But if you want to like go more in depth, it's kind of you go do your own research. So I never quite learned about the prisoners of war in school, and I did find it kind of fascinating, and I picked it up. These stories are absolutely horrific. Like you are following accounts of these men that have been to war, that got caught, and it's actually from different places. Like I think there's someone that got caught and like went to Italy, like in France. Japan is probably like the hardest one to read in this book, when they got caught and were sent to the Japanese war camps. It was like absolutely insane. And the one word, like I have no other words besides horrific. Like this book is absolutely insane, and go into it with like just maybe look up trigger warnings, or just go into it knowing that what you're about to read is really upsetting and it will make you uncomfortable, and it's just really eye-opening. Like there's even pictures in here. I think there's ones where they won't show all of them because like they're pretty nasty. I think they were working on the Burma rails. I could be wrong. Um, but that was interesting. Like you've got them like working and stuff on the train tracks, and then you've got like the punishments that they dole out. Sorry, I'm just trying to look for this picture. You've got like just a lot of like in-depth stories, like first POV of these people, like what they went through is absolutely crazy. Yeah, the Burma rails. So like that's what you probably can't quite see it, but yeah, honestly, I think if you're into this sort of stuff, I would recommend reading it. But I think if you're not, it's fine to to skip it. Honestly, I would not blame you. But it was just fascinating and really eye opening, and just something that I wanted to learn about. So that's what I did. Then I read The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This I read in school. It's a classic. It's a modern classic, I could say. Um, you're basically following like these greasers who are a bunch of rich kid socks, and they are at war with another sort of gang. Anyway, you're following these two boys. I think it's Pony Boy and what's his name? Johnny. Basically, Pony Boy has like a really hard life at home, and like it's really sad to read about basically, but he kind of runs away and he meets his friend Johnny in the car park, and or like their local town, and then something really, really tragic happens, and there's a murder, and basically Ponyboy and Johnny run away, and you're following kind of their story and what happens after. There's a very like wholesome ending, I guess. Like it kind of comes full circle, I would say, at the end, but it's a pretty quick read. Like I really like this book, and I would definitely recommend reading it. Then, lastly, for February, I read The Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. This, I won't really say much about this, but it is It is a murder mystery. It has a lot of religion in it, like at least mentions of religion. It's very like technical. It can be confusing. It's very like it is very controversial. This book is so. I'm not really going to say much about it. I like the murder mystery aspect of it, but yeah, as I said, it's so controversial. I don't really want to get involved in that. But it's one of those books I'm kind of like, I read. If you want to read it, you do that, but I'm not going to recommend it. Right, continuing where we left off yesterday, I will be going over May and June reads of 2024. The next four books I probably won't go into too much detail about because I actually do have a reading vlog on this channel where I read these books and I go more in depth about my thoughts and everything. So I'll probably just skim over the next few. But to start off with May, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is fantasy romance. This is the first series slash book I read by her in general, and I absolutely loved it. It did start off a bit slow for me, but it picked up, and before I knew it, I was like obsessed with this series, and I just had to continue reading it, and I absolutely love it. So it's got a special place in my heart, being the first one I read by her, and I would 100% recommend this series. It's so good, like it fantasy romance done right, honestly. Then we've got The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. This is a part of the Folk of the Air series, so you're following Prince Oak, and I think that's Jude's brother. And yeah, you're basically just following him as he um, navigates being a prince and he kind of is paying for a betrayal, it says. And you kind of get introduced to what's her name? Ren, who becomes a big part of Oak's story. So it's really, really interesting. I did like it. It was really nice being back in the world of Eltham and getting to see all the characters that we fell in love with in the first trilogy. So absolutely would recommend that book. Then I read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Classic, literally a classic. It was a bit harder for me to read. It did take a while. It took some brain power, but I ended up really enjoying it. I annotated the book a bit just to kind of help with my understanding a little bit and just to kind of see if I could follow along. And it definitely helped annotating it, but you're basically following the love story of Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy, and their characters are quite flawed, but it's really interesting to see them kind of come together and kind of realize, I guess, how they act and just how it's affecting them kind of being together and just their dynamic as well and their status and stuff. So it's really interesting. Like honestly, if you're gonna read a classic, I would definitely recommend reading Pride and Prejudice. It's it's pretty good. Like I said, it takes a bit of brain power, but I think it's one of the ones that if you've read a few of the easier classics, you could jump into it and it'd be pretty easy to get into. Then I read Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is the first book in the Powerless series, and I remember really, really loving this book. I also remember like saying that she should be really proud of herself for writing a book and publishing it in the first place because it takes a lot. Like this was really good. I think this is like fantasy romance as well because they've got powers. It's kind of like a game situation where they get chucked in and they have to survive, and you just you're following Kai and Payden, but like Payden's our main character and she's technically an ordinary, so she doesn't actually have any powers, but she's pretends to be a psychic. This is all in the back. And she kind of has to blend in with the elites when she gets taken to be part of this game that they have, all these trials, you could say. So, yeah, very interesting. Loved this book a lot. I loved her whole series, honestly. Like, I read them all as soon as they came out, and they were really, really good. Then I read this is going into June now. I read Imagine Me and Believe Me by Tahira Mafi. These are the last two books in the Shadow Me series. And there's not much to say because it would be spoilers if I told you what they're about, but crazy. I think she wrapped it up really nicely. I did really like this novella because you just get a bit more about Juliet and Warner and kind of the aftermath of everything that happened in these books. And it's just kind of it's a nice way to end the story. I think it definitely wrapped it up really nicely. So I would 100% recommend the Shadowby series. They are so easy to read. Like the writing's pretty big and everything, but the story flows so nicely. I think like a lot of people could probably read these in one sitting, honestly, because they're just so easy to digest. And this is dystopian romance, I would say. And yeah, can't say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but would recommend. Then I read Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and I love these covers. Like these, I love the newer ones with the art style and everything. But yeah, basically, obviously, if you don't know, like everyone knows this story. You're following Harry Potter as he finds out that he is a wizard and he is going to Hogwarts and just his journey to get there and love it. Love him being at Hogwarts. I love reading about that and the magic system and him meeting Ron and Hermione. Like this is the start of his journey basically. And I mean, if you haven't read Harry Potter and you don't want to read it, I would just recommend watching the movies honestly because they're still just as good. Like honestly, they did really well with the movies. Then I read Dracula by Bram Stoker and I annotated this one as well and I think I've read this like twice now because I read like an email version of this that someone had like put out different chapters every so many days and you just follow along that way. But pretty good classic. I think this is one of the easier classics to start off with too. I would say it's really not too hard to get into. It did take me a while, but classics normally take me a while regardless. But you're following Jonathan Harker as he basically goes to Count Dracula's castle. I think he's there on business and he ends up kind of getting thrown into this dark world and discovering who Count Dracula really is. And then there's a lot of twists and turns and some really sad moments. And it's just a really, really immersive, heartbreaking story. Because some of the characters just do not get to see the happy ending that they deserve. But it's really good, honestly. I really, really did enjoy it. And the way he describes like landscapes and stuff too is really, really good. Like I highlighted a lot of the landscape descriptions and just him describing like certain characters and just like the older language that they used to use was really fascinating to read too. So would definitely recommend it. And then lastly, I read Homegoing by Ya. I don't actually know how to pronounce that. Sorry, I'm going to butcher it. I can't really remember this one too much. It has been quite a while, but if I try and jog my memory, you're following two different sisters. One gets sold to slavery, and the one's a slave trader's wife. So you're basically just following these two on their very, very different journeys, and it was like a really touching, like heartfelt novel. There was some pretty sad and upsetting parts to read it. I can remember like it was a bit like, whoa, this is just it was like full on, but in a really eye opening way. But yeah, if you kind of like stories like this, I would definitely recommend reading it. It's definitely one of those ones that's like it's worth it to read, I think. And yeah, it's just crazy. I think they come back together towards the end of the book, maybe. I can't quite remember. I think it's so like you're following their separate journeys, but I do think that they end up reconnecting at some point, but I could be wrong, honestly. But yeah, 100% would recommend that book as well. And that concludes the May and June 2024 reading wrap up. I hope that this version's a bit better than my first one. You can hear me more, the lighting's better. I just wanted to do an updated version because I would, I want to kind of work on my channel and make it, a little bit nicer and more enjoyable for you guys to watch and, you can actually hear me and see me. So, yes, anyway, I will see you guys next time. Bye.